Today we have got some fiberglass damage on our 21-foot project boat. Now if you've been following the channel, been doing transom stringers, gonna do floor, and we did a lot of grinding and sanding to prep the interior of this. Now while we were grinding and sanding, we did do a little bit of beveling back on this. And right here on the nose of the boat is a pretty typical place for there to be damage when you're gonna like hit the dock or hit something. And sanding and prepping is very important. Now I wanted to show everybody what we used was some 40 grit on just our little DeWalt orbital sander there. That can do a really good job of sanding and beveling and grinding. Now anytime we're sanding and grinding, I like to try to use a vacuum if possible. So even if you don't have an expensive, like a Festool or something real high quality for sucking up the dust, a shop vac and a little DeWalt orbital can do a really good job of beveling or sanding. Now if you look in there, there's a gradual slope back from where the damage stops. Generally, you're gonna want about a 10-to-1 ratio. So if you've got 1/4 inch thick material, you're gonna wanna go from 0 back to full thickness. Over about 2.5 inches would be a 10-to-1. Now, if you got something under the bottom of the boat or something that's real technical, you can go as far as 15-to-1 or even 20-to-1 to really maximize that scarf ratio. But for this kind of application, a 10 or 12-to-1 is gonna be plenty good. And I wanna show y'all some tricks we've learned in the boat shop over decades of our family doing this kind of repair. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. Now, there are other videos here in the channel where we've done a lot of sanding and grinding, and I'm gonna kind of skip beyond that. You can always go back in the channel or see it, or you can just use your imagination to sand back that fractured or damaged glass. But then you're like, what do you do for this big gap in between? And a simple solution for that is some aluminum foil tape. We're using the boat as a guide. I'm trying to match the contour relatively closely. Now it does not have to be absolutely perfect. You can kind of adjust it a little. We just need something to kind of keep the glass from caving in on the back side, give it a little substance there. We're gonna do a double layer of this material. Sometimes you could get away with one, but stuff is cheap, and I find that 2 layers is gonna work better in most applications. Just kind of back the first layer a bit. And you don't have to make this perfect, folks. It doesn't have to be perfection. Sometimes people suffer from what we call analysis paralysis. We've talked about that here on the channel. Most anything you do, you can undo if you're not happy, if you're not totally happy with it. Say for example, even if I want to change this profile a little bit, I can unstick the tape and move it back a little bit if need be. It's not a big deal. I can make that a little fuller if I want, and then re-stick it. I like that pretty good. Now we do have some bad weather kind of heading our way. Typically when we're doing fiberglass work, we like low humidity. We like temperatures that are workable temperatures. We're dealing right now with about 83 degrees as a reference point. We've already sanded this very thoroughly. I did ditch one of the gloves. Sometimes dealing with that tape is kind of a bear. Obviously we got our table set up with all of our supplies, super convenient. We're ready to go, so we're not walking around. And today we are going to be using my favorite, the vinyl ester laminating resin from Fiberglass Warehouse. They've got a substantial discount code for Fish Bump TV viewers. Be sure to take advantage of that if you need fiberglass, Gelcoat, foam, fiberglass, raw material, foam core. I mean, they really got everything you can imagine. But the vinyl ester, if you've never used it, it splits the difference between epoxy and polyesters, gives you most of the strength of epoxy, but it gives you the workability of polyester, and I really, really like it. Now, before we go to laminating, I'm gonna use a little bit of acetone. I don't know if y'all can see that. Acetone is pretty hard to beat as a cleaner or a solvent, and we've been really, really careful. We're working with gloves. We wanna be sure to keep any contaminants off of this. And I'm just gonna wet that a little bit, prep that surface with some acetone, give it a little something extra to help. Now obviously a respirator is always a good idea. Right now I'm not wearing one just for the sake of audio, but we also have some really nice fans running in the background. And I highly recommend, if you're doing this kind of work, to be in an open shop, plenty of airflow, and a good quality respirator of some kind while you're doing this at home. Always a good idea. So, I'm gonna blow a little bit of that excess acetone off of there. And then one of my other favorite shop tools is gonna be your little Wagner heat source. This thing's like an industrial strength hair dryer if you've never used one. And a matter of fact, in a pinch, you could totally use a hair dryer, and you can see it's gonna kind of dry out that surface really nice. I like that. We don't want to go crazy with the heat. You would never want to open flame. You got to be careful dealing with acetone. It is highly flammable. But I have found that typically if you hit this with a blower, or just give it plenty of time to flash off and then come back with a little heat gun and warm it up, those fibers will kind of open up and be really, really receptive to grabbing the new glass. Now, it can be a little intimidating when you're first working on something like this, the damage. How far do you go? Generally, we try to sand all the way back till we don't see any fractures anymore. You can see there's still a little bit of fracturing right there in the glass, maybe just a little bit right here. But on this particular repair, I plan on actually coming back from the inside after we get an outer layer and double siding this. So I'm not terribly worried about this. If you were doing a hull fracture or a penetration in the hull, I would sand this all the way back till you no longer had any of these little fractures in between. But for this area where this is, it's gonna be totally fine. So we're going with about 4 ounces of the vinyl ester resin. You're definitely gonna need a couple of these little graduated mixing cups. 4 ounces to start is gonna be fine for a small application like this. Now I do have videos elsewhere in the channel that show how many ounces of resin are going to be needed per square foot of different materials. Today we're going to be using a little bit of 1 ounce CSM. Now you guys will notice I tore a feathered edge and we got a straight edge on the other, and you'll kind of see where that comes into play. And we're using a little bit of 1708 biaxial as well. Now per our little cheat sheet, let's say for today, it's fairly warm, but this is a small batch, so 4 ounces. We're gonna go with about 2.5 cc's of catalyst, and that's gonna be about right there. If you don't have some of these little graduated mixing cups, that's gonna be another big plus in being able to mix accurately. You'll be able to see this vinyl ester will actually change colors a bit. There you go. You can see it kind of goes from like a purple to almost a brown in color. If you never worked with vinyl ester, you need to try some. This is the hot ticket. Really, really good stuff. I know we got a lot of epoxy fans out there and people that have only worked with maybe polyester. This is really, really good stuff. Now today we do have some rumbles of thunder in the background. We do have some weather approaching, but on a small repair like this, especially, this is not wood. It's not an organic material. We have pure fiberglass. We're gonna be okay with what's going on humidity wise. And I'm a big fan typically of using a roller, and we may use a roller a little bit once we get a little further into this, but sometimes a brush is completely adequate to work this in. I want to try to get it up underneath these edges. And again, the advantage of the vinyl ester is it bonds more aggressively or more tenaciously than polyester does. Not saying epoxy is not great material, and for those of you that want to use epoxy and feel comfortable with it, you certainly could do this repair with epoxy. But remember, epoxy is not going to be compatible with Gelcoat, and I want to be able to use some Gelcoat over this, and for that reason we're gonna stick with a vinyl ester or a polyester. Sometimes it helps to wet this out when you're doing something like this, where you're just trying to float that material on there. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on the foil tape. You want to be sure to get good saturation. You don't want resin just pouring out of it. I'm going to go a little larger on this next one. And you can see that torn edge kind of helps this material transition a little nicer. And by wetting it out in the pan, we're not having to put as much pressure on our foil tape. Remember, folks, don't be scared to try fiberglass work. Sometimes people are afraid of making a mistake. And if you do your research, watch enough of the videos, chances are you're not going to make a mistake. But even if you do, the material is fairly easy to sand back off and redo it. And that's kind of like, you know, ultimately in most cases, that's all you're gonna, the worst consequences. And that's not a big deal to do. That's not terribly hard to do. So don't let that stop you from trying this kind of work. You could certainly start off with a little bit of material here and there and save yourselves potentially thousands of dollars on these kind of repairs. Or you might just be watching the channel to educate yourself. Maybe you want to hire a professional, but you just kind of want an idea of what materials they might be using and kind of the names of things and what a quality job would look like. Now I am gonna add a little bit of biaxial here, just a little bit to add some substance. I've already kind of cut it in a relatively thin strip and some good quality Fiskar scissors. Again, I'll put a link to everything we're using here on the channel below our videos description. That helps us out. I'm going to trim that down a little. Now your CSM is really good at bonding. Your biaxial is going to have more strength. Your 1708 is going to come with a light layer of 17 or CSM on the back side, and that's okay. I like a lot of times on repairs like this to start with 1 or 2 layers of CSM to begin with anyway. Looks good. You can kind of always hold behind with your gloved hand and kind of give that a little support. As we're dabbing it in, you notice I'm using the brush and kind of just tap. Got any Happy Gilmore fans out there? Tappy tap, just tap it in. Oh man, that's a good movie. Tappy tap. If you look here where the biaxial, it's going to be a little stiffer and sometimes it'll create this little edge. And the CSM is really good about helping to knock that down. Be curious to know what kind of projects you folks at home are working on. Our project boat is just for you guys. We're doing, again, stringers, floor, transom, if you're just tuning into the channel. If you want to see how we built our 29-footer in the background from scratch, we've got videos on building molds, building your own fiberglass parts, tons of Gelcoat repair videos as well. Really trying to build a library of content, make this the go-to source for all you folks out there wanting to build, repair, modify. And it's not just boats, this can be used in RVs, light aircraft, even around the house. Sometimes there are applications for this amazing material. And if you guys are enjoying the channel, help us grow. We're actually so close to 100,000 subscribers. I want to thank everybody out there who's been a loyal supporter of the channel. We want to grow the channel. We can't do it without y'all's support. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for you guys. And if you want to see us keep growing, remember to like, share, comment, tell a friend. And if you haven't subscribed and you're finding this information helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Okay, here we go. One more layer of 1708, you can see that one's a little more compact. So I wanted to show you folks at home how we do the feathered edges. You can see we got our cutting table, a little bit of CSM, and I'm going to use a nice straight edge here to get about the right width we want. And then you can use a standard razor knife. Just be careful with that thing. They are crazy sharp, but it will cut the fiberglass beautifully and gives you that nice little straight edge on one side and feathered on the other. So super easy. You can also tear it. So on the next layer, what you would do is move this up a bit, and then you can very carefully start at the end and kind of roll it or fold it. Once it starts, it'll go just like so. So that should be plenty. And you can see then the next one, what we could do is just go with the razor knife again and cut as many strips as you're gonna need. But for what we're doing right now, I think this is gonna be enough. It is summertime, but it's kind of toward the end of summertime, so it's starting to cool down. We're coming into prime fiberglass season, everybody. So you folks at home, time to get your supplies and get ready. The weather's starting to cool off a little bit, and the next few months, it's gonna be great weather for fiberglass. So we wanna take advantage of that. Now, generally, I like to finish with a little bit of CSM if I can as well. It's better cosmetics. So we started with some CSM, and we're gonna finish with a couple layers of CSM. And that will be enough, I think, for this initial pass. You folks, if you got projects going too, feel free to check out our Facebook group page at Fish Bump TV. We've got over 1,000 members now. So I want to thank everybody for joining our Facebook group page. That's proven to be a really cool thing for everybody to get on there and get to be able to share the progress of your project. I can get to see that. I'm going to try to spend a little more time on there. We're kind of winding down our summertime charter season, so I'll have a little more time for the channel. We've recently posted a couple fishing videos. If y'all want to see what we do during the summer months, feel free to check out some of our fishing videos. Your CSM is going to be really good at bonding and sealing. Your 1708 is going to be your strength, but these feathered edges really do a nice job of helping this material transition as well. The blending, you know, as we sanded that back on that bevel or that scarf, this is going to make it so that we can't even tell where things started and stopped, which is what you want. And ultimately, this boat is going to be stronger than it was from the factory. This is a Blazer Bay, but it's actually patterned off of a Kenner. And I had a Kenner there for a number of years. Very good boat. Nice heavy built fishing boat. Our family has always built heavy duty work boats, and fishing boats is our thing. I'm going to bias this one off to the side just a little bit, help that transition. As the weather approaches the 80s, 70s, 80s, 60s, even high 50s, that is optimal fiberglass repair weather. Not too hot, not too cold. Anything below 50 or so, and it can be challenging. You get above 90, same deal, it can be challenging. Cures faster when it's hot, cures slower when it's not. We kind of sanded out a little bit here on this edge. I'm just going to add a little bit. Help blend our glass. This material will come right away from that aluminum foil tape once it's kicked off a little bit or cured. That's gonna just about do it. I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. All right, right over here, maybe you can follow me. Again, a little bit of a transition there. CSM is really nice for blending and shaping. It's gonna be a nice little boat for somebody. I would say a 21 or 22 footer. Anywhere really an 18 to 22. I don't know if y'all would agree with that, but that's a great all-around, just an all-around boat. If you're new to boating or never had one, I would say that is the sweet spot, really. I'm gonna tie everything together one more time. Kind of work out from the middle. Roll it over the edge, and again you can see how nice that feathered edge blends. It's something I see a lot of people that have not seen or learned that trick yet, and it's really helps with your shaping. And it's looking good. Now what we're gonna do is go back to our acetone bucket, and sometimes we will get one of our hard rollers and do a little shaping and contouring. Now sometimes I have a larger, wider one, and sometimes we have a smaller, narrower one. I want to support this a little bit and try to contour it and maybe work a little bit of the air out. Looks better already, folks. This hard roller is the ticket for shaping and contouring and working air out of the laminate. We don't want it to be resin rich. We don't want it to be resin starved, although I've always said I'd probably rather have be a little resin rich than resin starved if I had to choose one or the other. But that's about how it should look there, folks. It should have a slight gloss to it, but you shouldn't have resin just pouring out. But you shouldn't be able to see a lot of dry fibers either. Okay, and like I said, remember, it is quite all right if it extends a little bit down. Just eyeballing that looks quite nice. Don't forget always to go back in your acetone bucket, and you can see there I just got a quart or two and a good snug lid. You want to be sure to close that. Remember, acetone is highly flammable. Remember, your hardener, which is your MEKP, is what we're using for your vinyl ester resin. That's kind of your activator for all your Gelcoats. If you're using an iso polyester, good gloves, some airflow, and it's not a bad idea to have an idea of what temperature we're dealing with when you start, so that you know exactly how much of that MEKP to add. All right, check it out, everybody. Come in here, look close. Our glass has cured nice and hard. It's got a good feel to it compared to everything else around the boat. If you remember, we used some of the aluminum, the foil tape or duct tape, and a lot of people think it's going to be a real problem getting it loose, but it seems like the glue that's on there kind of acts as a repellent to the actual fiberglass, so that comes off nice and easy. The only negative, I don't know if y'all can see that or feel that, is it's going to leave a bit of a waxy or a sticky residue. So before we go to doing a little bit of sanding and prep work, in fact, maybe we can zoom up under here and show you up tight and close. You can see that tape released nice, and you can see where we left a little bit of material and kind of bridged the gap. I'm going to use a little bit of acetone, hard to beat acetone, for cleaning residue, whether it be a glue residue or even cleaning the surface, prepping for fiberglass. Want to be mindful of splinters though, folks. If you're new to working with fiberglass, these little splinters right here will absolutely get you. So you want to be super careful with those. Want to be cautious. I'm kind of dabbing and wiping in there, but staying away from the splinters for sure. Surface prep is a big deal. Want a good clean surface, a dry surface, a rough surface. And anytime you can do a repair, if you can get some glass on one side of it and some glass on the other and kind of lock it in, we're tying new glass and sandwiching the old glass in between, and that's going to result in a really strong repair. Repair is different than a patch. A patch is just kind of to get you through maybe the weekend or just stop a hole, but a repair is as good or better than it was originally, and that's where we're going with them. The vinyl ester resin is a superior resin. The biaxial is going to be superior to the glass that they used. Now I want to talk about options a little bit. On this repair, again, we're using a vinyl ester. It is my all-time favorite for all-around uses. Compatibility with Gelcoat, it's super, super strong. It bonds really well. But another option you might want to consider is a iso polyester resin. It's going to be a little less expensive than the vinyl ester, still considered a high quality polyester, and that is actually what we built our 29 footer there in the background, is 100% iso polyester. Now don't let the tooling part throw you there. So if you contact Fiberglass Warehouse and want to get some of this, and say you got a project where you're looking for something a little more budget friendly and it's maybe a shorter term use, you can absolutely use the iso polyester. And tooling just means that it's compatible or capable for making tooling or molds, and that's what we use when we're working on the mold for like our hardtop. We use some of that as well. So it can absolutely be used in a repair like this, although the vinyl ester is going to be a higher tier and a stronger material. We're going to get ready to do a little bit of sanding, and for something like this there are a number of tools you could use. You could certainly use a little pneumatic die grinder. You could kind of get up in there and surface that. You could use a little die grinder like that. So this is an angle grinder and a die grinder, but you may have seen me using this little Makita. See, that's a I guess they call it a 9032. That is the Makita little narrow belt sander. I will be sure to put a link below in our video's description for everything that we're using. But this in combination with a vacuum, and I know it's going to be a little tricky to get the camera in there. This thing is a lifesaver. And what we're trying to do is remove the Gelcoat off that surface and get down to some raw glass, original raw glass, and tie these two areas together. Knock any burrs down as well on the back side. Not many tools. There's not many tools that will get where this will get. Now they make them in wider widths and narrower widths. I think you folks get the idea. I'm going to do a little more sanding. One other cool thing about this is it is variable speed. So you can really slow it down or you can really speed it up. You can also change the angle of attack, and super easy to change the belt. So this little mechanism here slacks the belt off. You can pop a fresh one on, that tightens it up. And this little knob here on the side kind of adjusts the way the belt runs on the track. You can get it running exactly like you want. Now I want to show you folks an alternate sanding method. You can use these little 3M blocks. That's an 05687. That holds 240 grit or whatever grit paper you want to run. And if you don't want to spend the money on something like the Makita, which is awesome, but if you're not doing this professionally, this block allows you to kind of put a radius corner, and you can come up underneath here. And what we're trying to do is sand this flat and then up onto the upper surface a bit. And this block will allow you to do that. Now it's going to take a little bit of elbow grease, y'all. It's going to take a little more work doing it this way. But this is gonna be a economical, DIY friendly option. I wanna kinda come on around to this side a little bit. Using the vacuum too, you don't have to have expensive vacuum assist tools. Although, if you're doing a bunch of this, it's money well spent, and quality tools will always recover a nice price on the resale side of things. So if you buy some tools, knock out your project, put them on Facebook Marketplace or something and get most of your money back. If you buy quality tools, you can usually do that. Now I'm gonna knock a few of those little burrs so that while we're working, we don't have to worry about them. I'm gonna contour and shape that a little bit. Hard to go wrong with 40 grit. And then we are gonna add a little more glass. So same deal up here. We're just gonna scratch that material that we did yesterday. Got a little bit of a high spot right there, folks. We're gonna go ahead and knock that down just a little more and blend it, because we're gonna put a little bit of CSM on the outside and pull everything together. All right, now if you wanna go the extra mile, you can do a light wipe down with some acetone. Once again, before we move forward, just getting everything really nice and clean. I do get a lot of questions about layering glass. Now if you're using a laminating resin like we are today, if you'll notice this says laminating polyester. That means it's gonna stay sticky for about 5 days, 5 to 7 days, give or take a little bit. I still like to sand it a bit and wipe it down with some acetone, or use some peel ply over it, which you can go back in some previous episodes here on the channel, or we may even use a little bit of peel ply on this when we're finishing up today. The same for the iso polyester resin. This is gonna stay tacky for several days, so you're not gonna have to do a bunch of crazy prep work. Although again, I usually like to sand just a little bit to knock any burrs off of it, and then maybe a light wipe down with acetone between coats. Clean any contaminants. Also important to wear some good quality gloves. Not only is that gonna keep the chemicals off of you, but it's gonna keep any potential sweat or oils that are in your skin off of the repair job, which is gonna be very important to a quality bond. All right, so we're gonna pour up about 4 ounces of the vinyl ester resin from Fiberglass Warehouse. Hard to go wrong with a little graduated or metered mixing cup. We do appreciate everybody watching all around the world. It's been amazing, the response. You guys, again, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to hit that subscribe button, like, share, comment, tell a friend, anything we're using, especially the good folks at Fiberglass Warehouse, take advantage of the discount code that they have for their vinyl ester resins, very good gel coats, and everything in between you're going to need for your repair job. Now we are using some of the MEKP or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide to activate, and per our little cheat sheet there for 4 ounces, we're going to go on the light side today, so about 1.25 cc's, which is not a whole lot. That's just going to be a little shake there. And you folks that are doing projects at home, big projects, if you need consulting from me directly, Patreon is the way to do that. We offer hourly consulting. We can walk you through your project. You can send me pictures. We can talk on the phone directly. So just remember Patreon, and we also want to thank our Patreon members as well that are actively working with us. You guys are doing some amazing work. Now you can see the vinyl ester will kind of get a foamy look to it. That is quite all right. You could have put a little bit of blue tape in there if you wanted to kind of protect it, but we're going to do some more sanding and fairing, and honestly I feel like it's going to be quite all right. Remember some eye protection anytime you're working upside down as well, folks. I'm going to kind of just place that by feel. Come back with the brush and tap it in. A brush is hard to beat for this. I'm typically a big fan of using a roller on bigger surfaces. The only thing is when you are brushing or dabbing overhead, the resin is going to tend to want to run down the brush. You also notice today I am wearing a little bit of a Tyvek suit, but I've cut the pants off, or I've cut the legs off. Much cooler to work that way. Where I'm working, I'm mostly just worried about keeping it off of my torso, my upper body. That's one thing to kind of help you work in higher temps. All right, I like it. Now I want to say I want a piece about that long to tie everything together. Lots of little tricks to the trade, folks. Learning how to cut and shape your glass, trimming your Tyvek suit, wetting your glass out before you try to adhere it overhead. All of those little things. And for you DIYers out there that are following the channel, don't let it intimidate you. Sometimes people are scared to death of something going wrong or having a problem, but there's no substitute for just getting out there and learning, doing, trying, building something. Start small, maybe even get a little material like this and just practice a little bit on something that's not high value, that's not critical. Get comfortable with it. Again, I would recommend some 1708 and some 1 ounce CSM in either the vinyl ester or the ISO polyester. ISO is going to be the highest caliber of polyester resin, and certainly worth considering. Now, one thing you always want to remember on the 1708, you always want to bond the CSM side to the surface. You don't want to bond the woven, the heavy fabric first. So we want to make sure our orientation is right. This is going to be the CSM side. We already put a layer of CSM under there as an additional reinforcement. I know our videos tend to run long, folks, but they're high in detail. We're not skipping a bunch of steps here. We want to be able to teach you folks at home how to do this, how the professionals do it. And again, if you're new to the channel, I did grow up in a boat shop. My father was a boat builder. My brother is a boat builder. We built the 29-footer there in the background. If you want to see how that was built, we got a whole video series documenting that. Feel free to comment and share what you're working on. We love to hear from our viewers. I'm going to go with a little bit longer piece. This is a pretty common repair right on the bow of your boat, right on the nose. This is a likely impact area. There are some great project boats out there to be found. Look around on Marketplace and whatnot. You can find some really nice boats for $1,000, $1,500. It might just need a little glass work. And if you want to, you can just go straight to. We've done a lot of that as well in the past. Just tear it, stick it, and then wet it out. Now, I don't think I showed this before we started. I do want to show you the temperature. We're working with 82 degrees Fahrenheit or 28 degrees Celsius for you folks out there on the metric system. CSM is a really good material for, like I said, blending and shaping. You can use a hard roller to kind of form it. Can tie old to new really, really well. Really good for automotive or auto body, the CSM. Just remember, if you are working with epoxy, you may have issues with CSM compatibility. That is one of the things I do really like about vinyl ester, is it's 100% compatible with Gelcoat and CSM, whereas epoxy may not be. Generally, guys in the profession don't recommend using epoxy with CSM or Gelcoat. Unless you folks, again, overseas, there is a CSM with a powder binder that will work with epoxy. But here in the States, it's going to be like a solvent-based binder, and you got to use polyester or vinyl ester to get it to melt and conform. Now I'm going to start with some fresh gloves, because if you haven't seen working with a little bit of the peel ply, I've got other videos here in the channel where we're working with it, but this might be an application for it, and I thought, let me show you folks at home a couple little strips of it and show you how it can kind of smooth out, how it could work. There you go. That's another little trick. Sometimes when your hands are sticky or wet, trying to get those gloves on, if they don't want to go, you can get a little air in there, and it'll allow you to work your fingers up in. So there's a couple different ways. If you're trying to bend this around, you're probably going to get a wrinkle. So what you can do is do this in little strips and overlap them so that you can kind of work around a curve or a contour. Say for example, you could start right here. We're going to use this brush to smooth it out. I can tell my vinyl ester is going pretty fast. I'll work the peel ply in. Same right here. We're just going to start where the other kind of left off. Sometimes you get a little wrinkle. That's okay. You just have to kind of work with it. I like to leave a little bit hanging off the edge too, where you have a place to grab it and start. If you don't leave a little edge, you may have trouble getting your peel ply to release. We don't want that. That's another one of those little tricks of the trade. See, we're coming right down. We're going to let this hang over a little bit and overlap the previous piece. This is just going to help smooth it down. Now, if you were working with epoxy, this would eliminate the need to sand and or remove the amine blush, which is another big advantage of peel ply. Not only does it smooth the surface down, but for epoxy work, that is one of the big advantages. I don't know if the camera will pick up how much that smooths that CSM surface down. Really, really nice. The camera should be able to pick up this. Look at the difference in the texture of the peel ply versus the CSM. Again, for this particular repair, this isn't absolutely necessary, but this may give some of you folks at home some ideas and some options, especially if you're new to the channel. We've been growing rapidly and there's a lot of new viewers. And again, we want to welcome everybody. Feel free to comment. I will do my best to answer. That looks really nice. We got just a tiny bit of resin left, but that was a pretty close guesstimate. Now, one more thing you could do is use a hard roller to contour this a little bit, contour it and shape. You can absolutely roll over the peel ply if you want. Sometimes you'll get little bubbles and whatnot, especially since I segmented it, but that's pretty normal. Shape it. It's actually very satisfying for you folks again at home that have never done fiberglass work. It can be intimidating, but I tell people it's a lot like baking in that it's not rocket science, but there's a recipe. You need to follow the recipe. If you follow the recipe, you can expect good results. All right, here we go with the peel ply. Folks, it is the next day and we are removing peel ply from our repair, you can see the difference in texture. Now it's okay, every now and again you may get a couple little fibers from the peel ply, but if you've never used this stuff before, it is fantastic. It's smoothing things down and like post curing or help things to cure underneath. You won't have any tackiness under here. This is not going to require much, but you can see there's a few little fibers there from the peel ply. And the 40 grit is going to make pretty short work of it. Next up, the little DeWalt sander with some 40 grit. Hard to beat it, like say for this heavier stuff underneath here. Conquer this grit. Certainly go a little bit on top if you wanted to bear it in. See how quickly, especially over here on this side, makes really quick work of it. Now another tool y'all seen me use is this Bosch. This is a variable speed buffer polisher. And what I like about it is you can really slow it down or speed it up. And if you wanted to do some heavier grinding and sanding, this one might be the ticket. I really like this one. Really like that one a lot for surfacing and profiling. Now again, you can also go back up underneath your little Makita, and maybe my cameraman can pan around up underneath there really good so y'all can see the finished product. And this little belt sander will do wonders. This little tool is a lifesaver for those hard to reach spots. So also, let me show just for those of you folks that are kind of wondering out there, I do have a micrometer here where we can get an idea. You can see right there we're at about, a little over 1/4 of an inch, like 5/16 of an inch. And then same deal here, we're a very similar thickness over on this side. So very similar build rate, similar strength, really, really tough, folks. And that's something that everybody, DIYers at home, can do that. Don't let this stuff intimidate you. There's nothing you can do that really can't undo. It's a learning curve to it, but we're here to help you folks. So it's Captain Joe here with Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV on YouTube. My amazing son Logan working hard behind the scenes as my cameraman, and we will catch you folks in the next episode.